877 Out the Box, H-Town's number one hip-hop and R&B station. Que pasa, gente? It's your homegirl, Jessica Jeanz of the Late Night Hustle, supporting the independent, underground, local, and Latino hip-hop, plus celebrating 50 years of hip-hop on National Hip-Hop Month. And all month long on the Late Night Hustle, we are just showing light and giving love to all the elements of hip-hop, that being the DJ, the b-boy, the graffiti artist, the lyricist, rappers, just every single element. And we could not have all the elements of hip hop, of course, without touching base with the graffiti factor, which I want to say is probably came before any of the other elements, right? And in the building, representing for graffiti, we have the one and only Gonzo in the
Yeah.
building.
Oh my God, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for the invite, and thank you so much for including graffiti in what you're talking about. A lot of people don't really, either might not know that graffiti is the visual language of hip hop, and much less it was the first element. I mean, before Cool Herc was Cool Herc, he was writing graffiti. So that's how far back this goes.
Okay, I didn't even know that. So, yeah, so there wasn't even hip hop, right? So there wasn't even an element to even say that it was the first element, but it is actually the first elements. We're talking about language, art language has gone back, the Egyptians, hieroglyphics. We're talking about, different types of civilizations that used art as a way of being able to speak. And that was mainly like the first languages that we had as beings, right?
Yeah, a lot of people they see what we do today, but a lot of people don't realize that what we do and what we're doing now it's in our DNA. As you were mentioning, the cavemen were the first graffiti writers. They were the first ones to use before there was a written language, before there was a spoken language. They were using cave walls to leave their messages and their marks to say, "I exist, I was here." Cavemen were the first spray paint graffiti writers.
Ooh.
How you say? Well,
Yeah.
they would get dirt or berries and they would chew it with their saliva,
And then
they would put their hand up on the wall and then and they would spit the spray concoction.
Whoa, yes.
And so not only are they using spray, their mouth as a spray paint, they're also using their hand as a stencil. So they're the first graffiti writers, the cavemen.
Wow.
And as you mentioned, every civilization since then has used walls to document their culture, to tell their stories. The Egyptians, the Romans, the Mayans, anywhere around the world, any culture has used walls to preserve who they are. And we're just the modern day scribes.
Yeah, and so just kind of going back into like the early days of graffiti art, right? Like when we saw a lot of these things going on in the hoods, or even like in New York and subway tagging. What for you was the thing that gravitated you towards graffiti art?
Oh, wow, that's such a great question. I was always artistically inclined as a kid, but my parents came from Mexico. For them, art was not important.
Yeah.
And wanting to be a creative, I didn't have an outlet, and I didn't have access to a museum, an art gallery. I didn't have any. There was only one public mural in my neighborhood in the East End, and it was by Leo Tanguma, and it was the rebirth of our nationality. And that one mural inspired me to be an artist, but I didn't have any other art around me or anyone that knew how to guide me. And graffiti was the first time I saw something that spoke to me as urban youth. And not only that, I found out that it was being done by kids that were my age, and they were brown, they were black, they were from the poor neighborhoods, they were from the ghetto, and I was like, oh, they can do that, I can do that. And that
Yeah.
really inspired me to want to pursue that. And this is back in like 1979, 1980,
Yeah.
when rap was making its way across America. I remember the first time I heard rap music. I up until then, I was listening to other people's music. I was listening to my grandparents' rancheras. I'm listening to
Yeah.
my aunt's disco. I'm listening to my uncle's classic rock. And when I heard rap for the first time, I immediately knew that was something for me.
Why do you feel like it was for you?
Because everyone around me hated it. It was like, what is that noise? I don't understand that. My dad was like, why does the needle keep jumping on the record? I'm like, no, it's
Right.
the DJ. He's scratching, he's mixing, and it was so a counterculture at the time. It was a subculture, and it was misunderstood.
Yeah.
And I think that was the lure as a young urban kid. A lot of times, here's another great point. My parents came from Mexico. I was born here, so I'm first generation, Mexican American born. And so growing up, I kind of had to walk this duality of where do I exist, because
Yeah.
I wasn't a white American. I was brown in a white America, and also my parents were speaking Spanish, and I didn't really know where I fell in. And hip hop gave me a place to exist.
I love that. And for me, like just kind of watching like the first breaking movies right back in the day, and watching these guys, shake the can and spraying and everything, and it had a real bad rap, right? It had a real bad rap when it came to tagging, or they didn't even call it art. They're like, you're just tagging up and causing problems, and it's gang related. How how many times did you get in trouble?
Well, I ran track in high school, so that kind of helped me out. But people fear the unknown, and so
Yeah.
when they see something pop up in the middle of the night, and the first thing they think is this gang related? They think,
Vandalism.
is it vandalism? What's going on? Is my neighborhood going to go down the
Yeah.
drain?
Mm-hmm.
And so early on, I realized that the only way we can make a difference here in Houston, anyway, was I had to essentially educate the general population. Educate, like, this is what it is. There's an art form behind it. This is art, and once you have something that's misunderstood through education, they're like, oh, they see the live painting, they see the before and after, they see the process. A lot of times
Yeah.
they see what's the end result, but the art is a verb. It's the action of creating it. So when people see someone
Mm.
actually making something, they see, wow, that's actually talent. Like, whoa, you're manipulating that spray can in these really
Oh
cool ways. And so
yeah.
they see that there's artistic value. And in Houston, when I first started, there really wasn't a scene. There was only a couple of us that were actually doing it. And I dedicated my life to help usher in this graffiti art form and turn it into something sustainable. And what used to be feared and unknown
Mm-hmm.
now is embraced and thankfully in demand.
Yeah, and you can see your work. You do the most beautiful work. The colors, the way you choose to represent the city of Houston. For those who are just joining us right now, we're speaking to Gonzo, one of the best graffiti mural artists here in Houston. Where are some of the places that people would be like, you know what, I seen that. I seen that mural.
I would say the wall that most people would know me for, or be like, oh, that's the guy,
Mm-hmm.
is the wall that I painted in Market Square.
Okay.
It says Houston is inspired, and this was back in 2013. And this wall, we were hoping that it would run a decent run, but it's been 10 years now that it's been up. And when I painted that wall, it really became it added to the visual landscape of what Houston is, and it became a visual identity for the city.
Yeah.
The year that we painted it, I started, 2013, and that fiscal year, um, that's when Instagram was becoming what it is today, and that was one of the number one photos posted for the city of Houston, was that wall. And
Houston is inspired.
yeah, and that wall really helped open more doors and more walls, because a lot of people started seeing the attention that it was bringing, a positive attention. People were posting pictures, and that's when hashtags were coming out. And
Yep.
I
Yep.
think a lot of other property owners started to realize the value of putting art on the side of their buildings, and now it's like so many more walls that opened up. And what's cool about that is it offers more opportunities for more artists to make a living here in the city.
Yeah, and it's a very unique style. The colors, when you see your art, it's like it's you. I know when I see or I come across a mural and I'm like, oh, I know Gonzo did that.
I appreciate that. I have the I like using colors that normally don't play well together. Like, you have your primaries, your secondaries, but I like squeezing in between, to that fuchsia, that aqua,
Ooh.
the turquoise, like those oddball, those colors that for me they speak to me. And what's interesting is a lot of times people, like, they look at it, especially here in America, and they're just like, that's wild. But when I paint in Mexico, people understand it. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, that's my culture right there. Or I
Right,
go to other
right.
countries, and then they kind of hone in on it quicker than people here in America.
Yeah, I relate to it a lot too because, well, not only because of the art itself, you have slabs, you have, the astronauts, you represent for the Astrodome on a lot of these, just a lot of signature things that mean a lot to Houston culture. But even the colors for me, like, I'm from San Antonio originally, and we're really colorful out there, Mercado, and, the Spurs, and, we had a lot of different colors. So I really gravitate to a lot of your work. One of the other ones that I see a lot is it's on top of one of the buildings, isn't it, downtown Houston?
Yeah, so I have the Camden Apartments,
Okay, yes.
and it's a full wraparound. We painted one full side,
Woo.
and it made the other side kind of like stand out, as in, wow, it just looks weird. And the owners were kind of joking, and they were like, what do you think about painting the other side? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. They're like, really? And I was like, yeah, if you're down, I'm down. And like, let's do it. And so
Wow.
as the scaffolding came down one side, we were really just moving it and putting it up on the other side. And that's another cool thing about Houston. Like, when we painted that one, there weren't really that many full size of buildings, blockbusters that you could see from the freeway.
Yeah.
And to see how far Houston's gone, it's like now we have whole sides of buildings being painted. And again, to me, it helps to give a place of visual destinations.
Yeah, yeah, and it really is. It defines Houston, right? Because Houston, like you said, has embraced this graffiti culture. Like even as like the Be Someone sign, it's part of like what we do here in Houston. It's part of the look here of Houston. Um, for I know that you've done. I mean, you've been doing graffiti since you were a kid, so I know you've climbed up really, really high buildings. What is the highest that you've been up? You can't be afraid of heights, but what's the
You know
highest
what,
you've been up?
you can't be afraid of heights. And one thing about this whole thing is graffiti started as a young man's sport. Back in the days in New York, when it was being developed, it was kind of like 11 to like 14, 15.
Mm.
Those are the kids that were doing it. And it was kind of thought like, if you're 17, 18 still doing this, you need to get a life. Because this like you need to go on and get a job and go to
Yeah,
college.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
the mindset was like, this is something we do for fun as kids. But what happened is it started to develop and started to grow, and people started to realize, hey, I don't have to stop doing this. I can continue this as an art form. And so that being said, when you're younger, you take more risks. And
Hmm.
now, at my age, it's more like I can appreciate someone climbing up on the side of a billboard, but I'll appreciate it from here.
I'll take some, some professional scaffolding, right? I'm not gonna sit there and just climb up there, but you do amazing work, and that's why I wanted to bring you in here because you've actually made a living off of what you love to do. For anybody aspiring to do what you do and is into the graffiti art, or maybe they've never really been or knew that they could actually, dive into this. What's your advice to them?
Well, it's a journey. Again, I started when I was like 13. I just turned 51. And so I've been doing this more than half my life. And I would say that what you see today is an overnight success. It was this journey that I started. And if you're going to do this, just follow your heart. It doesn't matter what you do in life. Just think about the things that you love to do so much that you're just going to do it anyway,
Hmm.
and follow that as a career path. And for me, I just knew that when I started spray painting, like this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, and then just find a way to make that happen. But you have to be consistent, follow your heart, follow your passion, and everything else is going to catch up to you. But there's a lot of other things like surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah.
I have Carolyn here who's basically like my lifeline. And she keeps me grounded. She keeps me centered and motivates me and pushes me to be more. And I think you need people like that around you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're talking about, inspiring and for those aspiring graffiti artists, just be professional. We don't want you tagging up the whole city and get you in trouble. But there is a process. There are steps that you have to take. But Gonzo's your man. I mean, he's the man. If you have questions, he is on Instagram. Your Instagram is Gonzo
247.
247. And you can have a look at just some of the amazing things he's done, the people he's worked with, the people he's met. Everybody knows this guy. And you have something that you're going to do on the east end of town. You were talking about something that's coming soon. Are you able to talk about that?
Yeah. So as I was mentioning before we started really locking these things down, Carolyn Casey, myself, Gonzo247, and another partner, we came in together, and we are now very proudly able to say that we have saved a building that kind of got lost, forgot. It was lost to time here in Houston.
Mm.
It's an old schoolhouse. It's called the Charles W. Lucky Schoolhouse, and it was built in 1918. Actually, the original building was built in 1909.
Wow.
It was a wooden building, caught fire, burned down in 1917. This one replaced it in 1918. It's been up ever since. And what's amazing about this building is it was the only African American elementary school in the area at the time. So already that has a lot of weight to
Yeah.
it. On top of that, it was the first school in this area that was named after a prominent African American educator. So bam, 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 right?
Yeah.
And so this building
We're
was used.
saving.
Yeah, this building was used. This was before it was even Houston ISD. If you know your Houston history, it was part of Harrisburg Independent School District. What?
Mm.
So then it was used as a school, I think, until like the late 30s, super early 40s, and then it just falls off the radar. It sat dormant for quite a while, and then in 1992, a lady by the name of Mickey Phoenix bought the building and basically saved it. And she had a business that she was running out of the space, and she turned the upstairs into her personal home. And that's actually when I met her. My homie Merge and I, we were driving around that area that what's now Easton or Edo. Back then it was Chinatown. But there was just a bunch of empty buildings, and we were looking for a place to just kind of go paint, get into. And I saw these gates that were just wide open, and this property that just kind of looked abandoned. And so pulled in all the way to the back, and we see this giant wall in the back. We're like, whoa! Like for us, it was like we just found an abandoned Disneyland. Like all this wall space, no one here, and we're looking at the wall like, what are we gonna paint on this? And we hear some commotion. We turn around, and there's Mickey with a gun on us. Like, what are you doing on my property?
Oh, wow.
And we're like, what? and she's like, what's going on? And we're, like, we're just trying to paint. And she's like, paint? I didn't hire any painters. And she's like this old school hippie. Yeah. So anyhow, she's like, I didn't hire any painters. What's going on? I'm like, no, like we're artists. And she's like, I don't see any art supplies. And so back then I had a little Cavalier, and I popped the trunk, and all of a sudden, it was all filled with spray cans. And she's looking at this like,
is this your art?
Yeah, like I don't get what's going on. No, like this is what we use. And she's like, all right. And this is probably one of the best opportunities I got in my life. She said, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to give you an hour. When I come back, either you need to be gone or I need to see something on that wall because I'm going to call the cops. So my homie and I are like, oh, snap. Psh, we start busting out, right? We just like, wah! And we go bananas. And sure enough, an hour later, she comes back. She's like, yo, I've been upstairs watching this whole time. Like, this is really awesome. I've never seen anything like this before. And we're like, yeah, it's called graffiti. Like, it doesn't exist here in Houston. And she thought it was really cool. And she's like, oh, this is different. And it turned out like she was also a creative. She had a t-shirt silk screening company. And so she was like, we were just looking for a cool, safe place to paint. And she was like, oh, if that's the case, you can come back anytime you want. And we're like, what?
Wow.
So like 4 or 5 days later, we come back and we start rolling over that piece of art. And she's like, what are you doing? Like, you just painted that. We're like, yeah, but in 92, there were no legal walls to paint graffiti in Houston. And so that's one of the first legal spaces for Houston. It's called the Wall of Fame. And also it's one of the birthplaces of Houston graffiti. So there's a lot of history to that space.
Right.
And we were there. I practically lived there. I was there all the time painting. And it turns out Mickey and I had the same birthday. She became like my art mom and really gave me a safe place to become who I was and cut my teeth as a graffiti artist.
Wow.
So now a full circle moment.
Yeah.
We're back. That's our space now. And we're looking to continue what she started as far as saving the building. And the goal is to, at some point, reopen it to the community. It was a schoolhouse, old elementary. It's a 2-story building. And we have an awesome outdoor space that would be a great graffiti sculpture park. Inside, eventually, we're working through our strategic planning to really make sure we do things right.
Yeah.
I learned the hard way in the 30 years I've been doing this. There's 2 ways to approach anything in life. Do you want it done right, or do you want it done right now? And you can't have it both ways.
Mm-hmm.
And with this building, it's so important. I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to just like jump out and be like, yo, we're doing all these things and not have a plan to back that up. So right now we're taking it one day at a time, and we're just taking it in the right approach so that we can build something that's sustainable, but also that outlives us.
Yes. So you have plans for this to just, kind of be the safe place that you were looking for when you were growing up. So there's been so much, Gonzo, that you have done to open the doors and the gate for this graffiti art to exist here. We have a whole graffiti park. All over the city, you can see different art forms and graffiti murals that represent the city. And we owe that to you, Gonzo, because you've done so much, you and your team. And just salute to everything that you've done for the art of graffiti.
I appreciate that, and I do get a lot of credit for but I'm more like at this age the grandfather, not the godfather. But also I didn't do this on my own. There was a whole slew of homies. Merge 360, Article 1, Color 1. Skis 181. There's a lot of ones there, but
I love it.
No, there's so much Houston graffiti history that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
And that's part of our mission with this new space, is to have some kind of museum component that we can tell those stories. Because a lot of times now there's so many artists, and thankfully so, can come out and do things on walls and have no idea the 30 years it took to get to this point where they can just go and paint a wall.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we want to do is pay homage to the founders of the graffiti movement, and hopefully educate the general public again as to who we are, what we did, and why we have whole sides of building in Houston getting painted now.
Yeah. So if somebody wanted to get their history right now, where could they do that? What could they do to start getting, maybe even, could they witness you guys, doing the art? Is there something where they can come and see, experience?
Yeah, so we have events from time to time, and so obviously we put everything through our social media. So just follow us, look us up, GONZO247. pretty much anywhere and everywhere, and then anything we're doing we put out there. But yeah, most of the times, there's opportunities where people can come and see us live paint.
Yeah.
There's opportunities to set up studio visits, but we try to make the rounds and we try to support as much as we try our best to support as much as possible.
Awesome, man. We had to include graffiti art when it came to the 50 years of hip hop and National Hip Hop Month, and of course we had the Godfather, Gonzo, in the building. Thank you again for so much that you have done for the culture, that you're continuing to do for the culture, and good luck with this facility that you have, so that we can continue, to leave our mark the way that our ancestors have. And before I let you go, I want to ask you, why is it important to keep graffiti alive?
Well, art in general, but graffiti is contemporary is what's happening now. It doesn't get more now than graffiti. You have an idea in your head, you have a spray can in your hand, you have a wall, and within seconds, you're manifesting that thought and that idea. For me, that's actually what got me. I think I was born at the right age. I was born before the internet. I was born before cell phones. I was born before technology. And for me, when I was a kid, when I drive around, I see kids looking down at their screen.
Yeah.
My screen was the window of the car. I had to look out that screen to experience life. And for me, art is something that's important, because we need something that's strong enough to pull a kid's head out of a phone, out of an iPad, and look out the window and experience real life. And on top of that, what's happening now, when George Floyd was happening, the Black Lives Matter happening, there's so many things that were happening that you can literally turn around, find a wall, and leave your message and be able to communicate with the general public. And art is something that all it needs to do is move you. It doesn't matter which way the needle goes, as long as that art has moved you and turned in any direction, it's done its job. And art is important to keep up, because that is what documents our culture, it documents our stories, and a lot of times that's what we leave behind.
Man.
What happens when the power goes out? What happens when Twitter shuts down? What happens when Facebook shuts down? It's great you have an Instagram account, but what happens when that shuts down? When the power goes out, what are you going to have left? These walls.
Ooh. We'll leave it right there.
Boom.
Mic drop.
Hey! Let me drop this one.
Gonzo, ladies and gentlemen, make sure that you follow him on GONZO247 on Instagram. Check out the art, support the art, and thank you for being here on National Hip Hop Month.
Well, thank you again for the invitation, and I look forward to doing more with you all.